Um, Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Hey, we're coming to you here live with some great guests we'll introduce here in a second. But in the meantime, be sure to give us a like, subscribe to us on YouTube, if you will, because we need all the help we can get on YouTube. There's so much competition nowadays, so you could really help us out if you subscribe over there on the channel of YouTube/Chris Voss. You can also subscribe to our Patreon channel at patreon.com/Chris Voss. Such a whore. But we need your support over there. The great thing is you can subscribe and get in exclusive Facebook channels where you can get access to free giveaways we do of all the cool gadgets, gear, and giveaways that we do from the Chris Voss Show and all the review products we get. So you can get a chance to get into that and everything else. We're live right now on Periscope, Facebook mentions, and on YouTube. So if you have questions, comments for our guest, Justice Mitchell, today, we can do that. So let's get right to Justice. Justice, how you doing? Let's
introduce. Doing good. Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate you having me on. This is a great opportunity. Love the stuff.
Yeah, we've been friends for a million years on Facebook, and I think probably on all the other social networks that are out there. And you're a really funny guy. I mean, that's one of the things I like about you and a lot of your content. You're very, I want to say you're odd, but you have a funky sense of humor, if you will.
No, I appreciate that. That would be highly accurate. I think I'm one of those guys that I learned that embarrassing yourself and self-deprecating humor is just way too much fun if you can get it out of your head that you're not cool. And I think that once you get past that point, then it really you can have a blast with it. And I think that's where I just drum up as much weirdness as possible. Plus, I mean, I've got an introverted, very highly intellectual wife that I constantly bombard with stuff that I think is funny. But if I can crack a smile or get her to giggle, I know I've knocked it out of the park. So. But I try to extend that to my audience in my social channels. But I always say to everybody, I'm like, well, it made me laugh. So if you didn't get it, that's okay too. So
you and I share that same sort of self-deprecation. And it sounds like you have that comedic nature too, where when you have that one person in the audience who won't fucking laugh.
Oh yeah.
You start angling towards that.
That's the person. That's the person. I don't really care about anybody else now.
And you're just ruining the whole fucking show.
Exactly.
I gotta stop swearing. YouTube will tag the show. They do that now. It's really insane. So yeah, it's you're tagging that one person. So people, while we're going through this podcast, so people can look you up, research you, stalk you, all that good stuff. Give us some of your plugs on all your different .coms and Twitters and everything else.
Well, the fortunate part about a name like Justice is that there's not a lot out there. So Justice Mitchell, pretty much on the tweets, on the Instagrams, Facebookies, and the whole 9 yards. If you take, if I'm doing my job right and you Google Justice Mitchell, I should own most of the first page except for this one asshat that literally threw acid on his girlfriend and it literally got arrested for it, and his name is Justice Mitchell, or there's some configuration about Justice Mitchell in there, and I'm like, you had to blow it, dude. I'm so golden the entire first page, and then some jerk, anyway. That being said, yeah, so justicemitchell.com is a little bit of a space for me to sort of talk about, marketing and kind of, connect to, talk a little bit about my clients, talk a little bit about what I think. I just did a post today about we still use email. And I threw up some tips that I'm still seeing that I was working with a consultant, or I was consulting with a client the other day, and I'm like, these are the best practices, and we need to remind you as to what we're doing here. So, so that's it. I mean, and I think it's one of those things that as much as we do this and as many times as we talk shop, professional to professional, it's like, well, we just naturally assume everybody gets it. This is what we all do, right? And then you talk to your client and that it's like you're speaking to them the very first time. So, and that's okay. So
fun part about this business is getting everybody up to par and stuff. I know what that's like. For years I dominated Chris Voss on the internet, and then of course Google Plus really helped me keep in play. And this guy came along named Christopher Voss, who's an FBI negotiation agent, and because he was an ex-FBI guy, he's like on every CNN show. He's on like every news show. I mean, he's got a great publicist. And so then he tried using the Chris Voss thing. And, you know, I kept burying him, and Google Plus has really helped me do that. And then as Google Plus seemed to fade, he seemed to get more powerful because he was, you know, appearing on these shows. And then he did a book.
Oh, the book. The book is the worst, right? It's like we produce all of this content and we funnel the internet with like amazing, I mean, countless blogs that we just give content away that we would normally charge for. We bury people with great information. We stay connected with people 24/7. And yet the jackass with a book that like literally self-publishes this thing and has a 2 boxes of them in the van, gets the keynote speech, and I get bumped to the back talking SEO. It's like, you know,
I do get a bit of a bump off it because since I tend to, like, my name, Chris Voss, like you, is on like everything, like Twitter, Chris Voss, you know, I got first in on everything, thank God. And was there as a launch like you were. So what's funny is I get like all of his audience, like they write me, they're like, that negotiating book is awesome. I just, and I'm honest, I just go, that's not me. But I know there's a whole ton of people that are following me because they think I'm that guy. And he's actually a fairly good looking gentleman, comparatively to me, I should say. I mean, if I had a choice, if I was a woman, I had a choice between sleeping with me or him, I'd probably go with him. I mean, he's not that good looking. Let's not push it. But
maybe just some spooning, like heavy spooning. You do some
heavy spooning, yeah, something like that. Yeah. So if you haven't followed Justice on his stuff, follow him. But let's get to what Justice want to talk about today, and give us a topic, Justice. What your mode of operandi is, or your professional optics on the subject that you have.
Well, it's funny you should say optics because that was a great dovetail into. I'm the chief marketing officer for a company in Orlando, Florida, in Central Florida called Magruder Laser Vision. Dr. Magruder has been a preeminent doctor nationally, and he came to my agency, which was, which I still hold, which is Big Block Studios. And Big Block, he says, hey, I need a competitive analysis, I need a brand evaluation, I need all of these things. And I really need to, I've been doing this for 20 years and I'm ready to, take the next leap up. And first of all, that's really daring for a client to do. I mean, to sit there and be perfectly content, and you're covering your nut and you're doing all your stuff and you're making a fine living and you've got a great staff and you have, standardized growth, maybe 5% or what have you, to sit there and say that I want to go back to the well and redo it. I mean, that's a client that I want to be involved in anyway, because frankly, a client that's not risk adverse is one that is going to allow you to really expand creatively and allow you to push marketing in an environment where I think that you can now. I mean, because we're not doing these tremendously large spends anymore. We're not buying media mixes for a year. We're putting up Facebooks for a few weeks and seeing, does that turn? Does that move the needle? So that being said, we expanded in that role. We redeveloped this brand. We relaunched it, logo, identity, marketing, voice. I mean, every brand initiative you can think of, started to roll that out to Central Florida. And then in so doing, one of the things that he kind of had always done from a community standpoint was sort of nurture this idea of getting involved with, preeminent sports or preeminent marketplaces that were sort of like maybe slightly left and right, but somebody that still speaks to your audience. Now, he knew that MLS was going to be explosive as it has been in any town that it goes to. I mean, Ad Age ranks at second only to football with millennials, and with what's up?
What is MLS? Give that to her.
Major League Soccer. So we've got soccer and the NWSL, so the women's league as well. So both of those came up from the Farm League, the USL in Orlando, and then became what is now Orlando City Soccer Club, which is the MLS branch. And then on the NWSL, the women's league is the Orlando Pride. So we went in and we negotiated the sponsorship package, and within the content that was sort of billed, contractually, one of the things that, Doc and I knew we wanted to do something more collaborative with the team and not be necessarily just this media spend as a passive source of brand impression. So we decided that we wanted to actually build a podcast and develop, the community from that soccer audience looking back at us. So we actually went in and we decided that we had the choice of obviously both teams. We could try to tackle both, but that would be ludicrous. And frankly, everybody and their mother's brother wants to cover MLS just like as you would expect. It's like NBA versus WNBA. Nobody wants to touch the women's league just because it's still one of those things that it's always going to take that traction. So we decided to put our arms around it and say, let's put all of our chips into the basket of the NWSL, and we'll follow the women's team. And we constructed a podcast and a website called queenscast.com. So Queenscast, at its very root, was we decided to break it down into multiple verticals. And this is where, as from a marketing standpoint, and I'm looking at you and looking at the people that your audience and the people that are supporting you, what I would say is every one of us, whatever business that we have or however we're marketing it, has collective audiences that sit externally to whatever your direct vertical is. So if you're a hotelier, you might do a play with car enthusiasts or with, whatever, outdoor adventurers or whatever. Look for these pockets where you're seeing like a lot of obsession or a lot of discussion. And for Central Florida right now, it's soccer. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, everybody and their mother's brother is talking this way. So we decided that we wanted to be a voice in that, and we constructed the show. And I reached out to some people. I wanted a female host. I wanted a female preeminent host, and that slowly matured with the two gals that I was with. One ultimately left at the end of the first season to pursue her master's degree, and now Justina, also known as Jay on the show, is she's the cat's meow, and everybody loves her. It's great. And
That's
with
awesome.
that. Yeah, and with that, we just use it as a conduit for the show. We use it as a conduit for the office. So a lot of people will go, so Magruder buys the advertising, they sponsor the show. No, actually, like we cut it like in the facility. I mean, and we've actually learned some other tricks of the trade with content like this. I mean, you're extremely brave. You're doing it like, you're doing it live, you're doing it right now, and you're knocking it out. For us, we have so many pieces, like, we may get a testimonial or an interview from Coach the night before, or something that came like last week with one of the teams that like we got a sound clip from. So we need to compile all of that information. However, a lot of the times we drop on Friday. However, a lot of the times we'll have a game the following day. So our stuff has to literally be compiled, edited, produced, and then dropped the very next day. So how we got around that was we found a great company out of the UK. They're called GL Productions UK. And these guys, Tony and Jay, they're spot on. So literally we piled all the clips into Dropbox. We give them the time code. We assign, here's the places, here's the things, here's the drops. We're going to put in an interstitial ad here. We're going to drop in a 60 in the center, and then we load it up to them. And they, out comes a show Friday morning, and we're rocking.
That's awesome. You spoke to something about building community that's so important. And for a lot of years, I just focused on building an audience, put out content and all that sort of good stuff. And it really started to change, especially with, blogs dying. and the silozation of just these power networks like Facebook. It used to be there was like the Wild West of things were spread out everywhere. Even the rise of like Patreon for a way for people to build a community outside of YouTube. And so it hit me one day that where I was really failing is not building a community for my audience to engage in with me and to really engage the brand, if you will, and to build those areas for them to be part of the community, to do things, to engage my brand in lots of different ways other than just watching. And it's a real important factor. It's the reason we're doing more podcasts. I mean, right now we're doing Periscope, we're doing Facebook mentions live. And community is just so important to build because people want more than just to watch your show.
Well, and you hit on something too, and I think resonates with you in particular is I would say a handful of other what I would call social heavyweights, the Brian Solis's and you and a few other people, is you let people behind the curtain. And a lot of people don't. And a lot of people, it's like, and I'm not saying that they're formulaic, and I'm not going to point any fingers because, some of these people are my friends and I think that their content is still sound. But at the same time, I don't feel, and I even know those people personally, I don't feel the connective, emotional and spiritual connection like I do with you and Brian and a few and these other folks that allow you to kind of sit there and be like, share my successes and share my failures and share when I'm sad and share when I'm happy. I mean, I think some of the bravest things that you've done, outside of the struggle of watching the puppies and the dogs is go and embrace and tackle the weight issue and things like that, and you really owned it, and it's so unheard of now because everything else is so polished and slick and throw on a bumper and and cut it for edit and whatnot, and your stuff is very organic and non-linear, and I mean that's sort of the way that I approach my content as well, but at the same time it's very daring, and again it's that assessment of like what we're willing to put forward from a risk adversity standpoint. I think the payoff is large. It's like gambling, it's like you push a bunch of chips in, and sometimes you're going to lose, but at the same time, if you keep on going, those will make themselves up over time.
Well, thanks for the compliment. Brian Solis is just a good friend, and he's always been sweet to me. Just a really super professional when it comes down to being an analyst, and the books he writes are just amazing. I wish I could be like him when I grow up. I mean, my biggest problem is I approach things from a very keep it simple, stupid, but a lot of it comes from go back to the basics. Who was the college coach who had the go back to basics thing? George Knowlton. He was a famous NCAA coach, college coach, who won just a gazillion games. But his thing was always like, he'd have a player go, show some big, beautiful, crazy, unique slam dunk. And he's like, well, that's great. I want to see you do like 50 free throws and hit them all from the free throw line. That's what I want to see. Because that's going to be more important in the long game. You being able to hit free throws, and if you ever watch Shaq play, that you'll know what that's about.
Hack-a-Shaq, yeah, Orlando. Yeah. I'm all too familiar.
Yeah, I mean, he was. Correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't he horrible at the free throw line?
Oh, we called him Hack-a-Shaq. What you would do is you'd go up and you'd hack his arm to force him on the free throw line because he'd always miss. So that was the whole idea was Hack-a-Shaq. It's like go ahead and hit him so that you put him on the foul line.
Yeah, and so somebody will have to put this in, but there's a famous college coach, and his always thing was like, when things stop working, go back to the basics. Go work the horseshoe around the court, around the it's the horseshoe, right? The
arc, yeah. I mean the arc, and yeah, I mean within the paint, outside of the paint.
Horse used to play horse that way. Remember?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Stuff. And so he's like, look, go back to basics. I don't want to see crazy, 3-point shots from, across the other court. He goes, I want you to be able to do the basics, because if you can't do the basics, you're screwed. And I've used that apparition or theory, I guess, if you will, in my business, where anytime the stuff starts going off the rails, stuff stops working that was working, I'd be like, okay, you know what? Back to the basics, back to the core. What were we doing when this was working well? Where do we get off track? Where do we get offline? And so that's really, really important. Now, you made the comment, thanks for the compliment. You made the comment that I pulled back the curtain. I'm not really sure I have a curtain.
Okay, fair enough. And maybe that's it too. So,
and I'm not sure if it's intelligent. It might be the stupidest thing I've ever done. But one of the reasons that I do it is because I've seen so much social media leader fallout over the years. And even when I moved to LA, I was enthralled with the same thing, I think in 2011, 2012, where I'm like, wow, everybody loves each other and everybody's these great social media leaders and they're just lovely. I go down there from Vegas and they're all hugging each other and they're all good friends. And so I moved down there partially because I wanted to go back to California, where I grew up and lived by the beach. And I get down there and fucking everybody's stabbing each other in the back and the knives are out, and you find out all these horror shows that some of these people, that when you see them on social media, they come across as these, beautifully gilded, perfectly packaged control units of their PR image, and you find out stuff about them that's just insane. I mean, I won't get into that, but I've found out some pretty heinous sort of criminal activity of some social media leaders that no one seems to know about. And if you do your digging in court documents, and of course people brought this information to me, you can find it, and you're just like, holy shit! No one has any idea that guy is that guy, and whatever. And so I think that's my motivation for
nobody on the internet knows you're a dog, right? I mean, do you remember the old comic strip? Yeah. I
mean, actually, there's actually one social media leader who has rape charges, and he's raped people at seminars, and no one knows about it because the people are too afraid to go forward against the person. And so I checked the documentation. There actually is a court, police filing and stuff like that. But you would have no idea who this person was, and I'm not going to disclose it because it was told to me in private, and I have to keep that secret. Otherwise, what else is told me in private to be secret? But I've learned so many things about so many social media people, and I'm no angel, but I think I've pretty much told everybody that. You can go check my criminal records. There's none, but you can check anyway. But to me, that's what that whole part of is about, not having the curtain, about sharing the realities of life. I get tired of this veneer where, Robert Scoble, my good friend, our good friend, I think, used to write about it back during Foursquare. And he was talking about Foursquare. I'll never forget this comment that he made. He goes, the funny thing about Foursquare is no one ever checks in at like the pawn shop. No one ever checks in at the methadone clinic. No one ever checks in at the food bank. No one ever checks in on Foursquare at the bankruptcy court. No one ever checks, no one. And then I think there's a comedian, and forgive me for not giving a reference to it. I'm sure somebody can Google it or look it up. But there was a comedian that said, the funny thing about our society is with social media, with all these pretty faces and everyone's smiling and it's all these perfect fucking moments. He goes, someday when they, archive us and they dig us up, our future, or aliens for that matter, they come and they go, whoop, they dig us up out of the ground and find all our archaeological crap. And they're going to be like, wow, this society was like happy, like all the damn time with all these pictures. They were like never sad. They were like never unhappy. And to me, that's just a farce. That's just so fake. And part of the beauty of life is the pain, the pleasure, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And to me, when you're fronting this facade that you're You know, and you see this a lot of people. I hate the term hustler. I hate that fucking term. I hate it because that means you're hosing me with a facade. You know, I'll see these guys that, you know, they're posting all these beautiful pictures, kind of pretending that that's their house, and you know they live in a shack in a crappy car, and they're always broke, and you're just like, why are you posting those pictures of? You're just putting people on, and then when people meet you, they're going to go, that guy isn't that guy.
No, and you're right. You're right. And I think that that's an interesting point because, you know, one of the things, especially like, I mean, the construction of a personal brand like yours and mine in a minor league way, and Brian and so forth is we very much long ago teed up and understood that if I build a facade of something that I'm not, then I'm forced to live either that brand or I have to hide it and live the way that I want to. So I mean, those are the two that you know, and I think that what you're finding is in certain cases, and especially in the case of the person or people that, you know, have these, you know, not so credible backgrounds, is that they're forcing themselves into the, you know, who they probably truly are, and in such a way is both detrimental to probably their clients and the people around them, but ultimately is certainly not living up to the brand that they're trying to represent. You know, I think, you know, one of the things.
Then when people find out that you're not that guy, or it becomes really obvious, then people call you out as a charlatan.
Right.
And then they really feel betrayed. And so, you know, the other thing is too, is I've had people say to me, you know, hey, Chris, you're a bit of a drama queen. You're always booing about this or booing about that. And sometimes I start thinking, okay, you know, maybe I'm just, am I doing this for the attention? Am I doing it just for the show? And then someone will write me and they'll be like, you know what, Chris, thanks for sharing that. I'm going through this really hard time, just like you are. I can't be vocal about it like you. I can't open myself up that way. He goes, but you're really helping us deal with this, process it, find better solutions to process it. And people reach out to me and tell me how much me cutting myself open and bleeding openly online, out whatever my infections are, actually helps them resolve their issues and sometimes get closure. Like my Shadow memorial video that I did, I just posted it because I loved her and I just wanted to kind of share it, but also it was just my funeral video, if you will. And so many people have watched it and said they got closure from it. They helped, you know, they weren't there when their dog died and their parents took their dog to the vet for the final moments, and they didn't get to experience that. And so a lot of them have been living through me through some of those experiences. And so when I get stuff like that, I realize that there's so much more out there in the pain that I'm experiencing, and that by sharing it, I'm actually helping other people. And so that's what keeps me coming back to being real and trying to be honest in those moments.
Well, I think, and it's not that you wouldn't have paid that off, but I think in a way we almost all felt like we're watching you struggle with this through these, you know, these weeks and into months, you know, and when, you know, when she did pass and you went through that, I think it's also sort of a rite of passage for the rest of us, sort of like, you know, along with you. And I definitely share that. And I think that also too, I think it's also, again, very much an issue of when you build a brand, you know, what are you going to be, not only stylistically and not only your voice, but how do you resonate? I mean, you and I are very much, very exciting. We're impulsive. We're loud. We're brash. And I know myself, you know, like I you know, I'd say the wrong things. I do, you know, my wife will point them out every single time, but you know, and sometimes I'll immediately like sit there and be like, I can't believe that, you know, the president would say this, or this, that, and the other thing, or this brand did such and such, or why is this? And then of course, you know, people way more intelligent than me will then, sift down inside of these threads and sort of expose the realities of the situation. And I get education from that. And the thing is I don't then delete that post and go and then say, okay, well, they proved me wrong. I'm going to go away. I'm going to make that go away. I try to take that moment and literally say, tell me more about that. And I'm not trying to be fake when I ask that. I literally say, I learned by my mistakes. I mean, a Facebook post can be a case study of just the way that I was thinking. And by the bottom, I can sit with different information that at least I can, if I'm honest with myself, can process. So,
yeah, you and I are one of the few people that think that way. I can think of a few other people. Like, your content is always going to be funny or insightful or thoughtful. I think insightful and thoughtful the same way, but I'm still waking up.
I'll take both.
You'll take both. I'll take it all, Chris. But yeah, I mean, you post the most funniest pictures of yourself, self-deprecating. I think I do a little bit. You're much better at than I am. And of course, you have a family, and so you're always engaging in all the fun with your kids and things of that nature. I can only think of like a handful of people that do that. Brad Goss is very funny that way, from Canada. Brian, Brian, he's got a YouTube channel. Brian, he lives up in Denver, Colorado. I'm a face person. I'm a horrible name person. So, but yeah, the dilemma becomes at that point, I just want people that when they meet me, when they get to know me, they don't find out there's this whole other side of me that I've been hiding, that there's this giant facade, or that my message or my brand isn't real. To me, that would be like the worst. And what's interesting to me is, and you probably get some of this too, there's actually some people that really hate me, or that dislike me, or that think I'm stupid, which is probably more correct than the other ones. But I've actually caught them online saying, you know what? I hate Chris Voss. Guy's an idiot, blah, blah, blah. I hate his viewpoints, but I follow him because he's interesting, and I'm just waiting for the moment he's going to explode. Like, he's going if they're waiting for me to lose it, that like went out the door. I've actually caught them online having these conversations where they hate me, but they still follow me because they just never know what they're going to see next. There's, if you have a brand that's very perfect, it has that beautiful veneer, and it's very, it's got the hallway down line, and you never go outside the hallway, everyone kind of knows what to expect. It becomes kind of boring after a while to tune out. One of my friends has kind of moved away from posting everything outside of just one subject. And even though he's one of my best friends and I love him, I just really don't pay attention to his posts anymore, because I know every post is going to be on that freaking subject. So I'm just like, yeah, it's another XYZ post.
Well, and it's interesting that you're saying that, because you're outlining my point about, here I built a soccer thing, and yet I'm a LASIK, vision correction facility. The disassociation could be extreme, or you could sit there and say, look, I'm fixing your eyes. This is going to be a one-time thing, and then I'm probably not seeing you for another 20 years. Why would you have any reason to talk about me again? Well, if you're still interested in soccer, you may very well be like, they got that soccer thing, my kid listens to it or whatever. And I think that there's something that's, there that people should try to expand their marketing approach on. Like, for instance, I didn't realize that, like, only until a few years ago, that you had this amazing audio background and all this other sophistication outside of the gear and so forth. But I would watch the unboxing and so forth, and then I'm like sitting there, I'm like going, and I had these delusional dreams of Chris Voss's like Craigslist garage filled with all these fanciful gear and toys that he's immediately selling as he does the unboxing. Because I'm like going, that is the coolest. I've never touched a pair of headphones worth $500, but whatever it is. But I think I think it's one of those things that if you diversify your content, and even if it's every once in a while, I think that's essential, because to your point, you can't just sit there and beat on the same point over and over and over. Otherwise, it's like you might as well just pay some out of the sort of a box plan of whatever it is, $1,000 a month, and let somebody just roll out, the half a dozen taglines and offer points. And that's just, that's going to fall so short so fast, because you've got everybody now that are teeing up the, with Facebook Watch and with all these other, the streaming components that are coming online, where you can actually start to really decipher and profile, the content that you're going to push forward. Because I think that ultimately, everybody's going to demand video, and everybody's going to demand more and more interactive content. And the day of, a really well-written blog post is, sadly, like it or not, is going to get shorter and shorter, even if they hold hands together, maybe like, 250 words with a video but the Chris Voss Show, like full-time show, is probably not as far out as you probably
the beauty of me naming it that. And I remember in 2008, 2009 I was watching Chris Brogan, Robert Scoble, a lot of the people that were out there, and I was like, do I name it chrisvoss.com? Do I name it, what do I name this show that I want to do? And I knew I wanted to do something and build an audience, but I didn't know what I wanted to name it. And I realized the name was fairly important. And then finally, I talked to a bunch of people, powwow with a bunch of people, and it just kept coming back to, one of my biggest problems was social media was just, the word social media, to me, explain it. And in the keep it simple, stupid, like, for example, we mentioned Brian Solis. Brian Solis has this ability to take a concept and turn it into the most scientific, detailed breakdown, and just he can hack it up into these little pieces, and then turn each piece into a silo, and just micro diagnose that and bring that out and diagram it. And he has that ability. I don't. I just look at you and I go, it's social fucking media. What don't you get? Social media. It's media that's social. Hello. And he has the ability to diagram all that stuff. And so I have a lot of respect for him and other people that can do it. Jeremiah Oyang is one of them. But I just don't have that sort of thing. And the other thing is too, is I'm sick of talking about social media. Like, this thing's been around since 2009. If you haven't gotten it yet, then I really don't want to explain it to you. I hate explaining it to newbies as it is. So the beautiful part was, I said, you know what? I'm going to name it the Chris Voss Show, because the Chris Voss Show is wide open, undefined in its title. I can do whatever I want with this thing. And as over the years, I have changed. I moved away from, I used to talk a lot about entrepreneurism and then social media and hominin, and then that got boring, and so I moved to reviews, which were more interesting to me, and now that's gotten boring, and so now I'm opening the channel. In fact, our podcasts are now open to just about any subject, because I want people not to go, oh, you know what, it's going to be another podcast with Chris Voss talking about Twitter, Facebook again. I want people to show up and go, hey, you know what, he's got this guy, Justice Mitchell, on. I don't know what he's about, what he does, but I better tune in, because I better find out, because he might be interesting. And that's what I want. And so the beauty of naming it that has been that whole vision, given for what you're doing for the soccer brand. I mean, that's obviously, you got to stay within that brand scope, but there's probably, some expansions, some fingers that you can have go out, and people like playing that community. But
just to jump in, actually, right on that point, was one of the things that we talked about is like, well, just like any sports season, you have an off season. So what do you do with this? I mean, a lot of these sports programming, they go dark during that time. And when they do, I think that you just lose, first of all, you lose a lot of social credibility. I think you also, you're not fully putting your mind against who your audience potentially is. So what we did is we took the show, and then we basically said, who are the other players inside of this space that are following women's soccer and that are going to have an interest in this particular category? And that broke down to collegiate women's soccer, which we have, two really well-defined teams here in Central Florida. And then outside of that was co-ed youth soccer. So because to me, I'm a marketer, I mean, by trade. So it's like, I'm going to be looking at what's the most preeminent demo. I'm like sitting there like, I can, I can have someone consider LASIK after 20 years old. And, I'm wanting to speak to younger families and people inside of the 30s that are going to have kids doing what? They're going to be playing sports of some sort. And the vast majority, because of this town being as engrossed in soccer as it is, every other kid's in a soccer program. I mean, it's crazy. So we knew that dicing up that audience, now we have something to do in the off season. So now we've got this big chunk of X number of months so we can start talking about UCF and Rollins College and this other thing. And then we can also start talking about kids and gear and families and what it looks like to be a soccer parent. And I know that, some of our audience that are listening right now are like, how do I pull the trigger of the shotgun with my toe? Because this is the most boring thing ever. But for a certain select audience, this is really, really cool, because it's like, oh my God, somebody else is spending $10K a year, decking them out with the latest, greatest of whatever, or driving all over hell and high water, taking these kids to these games, and I'm not the only one that doesn't have a life anymore.
And that's one of the other reasons I share and pull back the curtain, if you will. The human parts of life, and being human is really an important factor to me. And I hope people see that in the brand. Even, the things that I promote or the things that I point to, the atrocities in life are meant to point to the human element. But you bring up a good point. Whether it's getting in soccer and being involved in this stuff and going, am I the only one who's like going through this? And you can find a community that can support you and make you realize that, okay, we're all here and we can share tips, we can share ideas. The same thing applies to some of the dark moments that I've had to share on social media with my dogs passing, things of that nature, that have actually people that have written me and said, wow, okay, so I thought I was just going through this ugly thing, and you're showing me that I'm not alone in this. And being not alone is really important. You see so many people to go to the extreme of it that, they commit suicide nowadays and they're trying to be prevention. You see people posting the suicide things, and you're not alone. But there's a lot of times where people feel alone. They're not driven to suicide, but knowing that someone else is going through your crisis, and supporting it in a community, whether it's just buying stuff or whatever, is really important. Like, people go on my YouTube videos, and it's interesting. They'll either do customer service things like, my battery quit working, can you help me? And I'm just like, can you go to the website? Or one of the interesting things is they'll buy a product, and the first thing they do when they get home is they'll go watch my review videos. And you're like, but you already bought the product. You're supposed to watch the review and then go buy it. But they do it to support their decision making, or to learn more about how to use their product, or to validate that they made a good choice, which is really kind of interesting. It's so much more than just like say something and the audience listens and they buy crap.
Well, and I think that there's something to be said with, does this match the consistency of the brand, my expectations of the brand? Because I get to live that through Chris, and now I get to kind of like go through that with myself. It's funny. I just attending like sports things, or my daughter and I are into martial arts, and we go to these things, and it's like there's these people that play these certain roles because I think that they've lived them either when they were kids or what have you, but they kind of follow this particular set of rules. And then there's these other spasmos like me that are just doing whatever, but I think that it's funny that you should say that, like that sense of like, well, Chris did it this way, and I'm going to do that because, again, the sense that, well, call it what it is. I mean, Chris has made he made a decision that I made, so that validates them. And I think that you knocked it out of the point when you talk about that. So,
yeah. So whether it's a community where, like yours, where it's soccer, and, soccer moms are like, how do we be the best soccer mom? And they can engage that community, or people like myself who've bled out online over death and despair, and people have afterwards written me and said, hey, I'm now going through what you went through. Do you have some tips? Can you help me? And being able to empower them. And that's really, as we're free flowing this podcast, maybe that's really what that community is about, is empowering your audience with the information, with the knowledge, with the power to be able to do whatever they want to do, whether it's actively engaging in soccer or just life lessons for that matter.
Well, and we used to joke around, all of us in the marketing world used to joke around that it's like, print is dead, but any topic in the world has a magazine available at any, so there's 50,000 trade pubs. So, I mean, at the same time, it's like you sit there and go, well, if I say this online, or if I write a blog post about it, or whatever, nobody's going to listen. Be damned if, there's not 1,000 people that care as passionately about X, Y, and Z as you do. And I think and I think that even if you don't, sit there and be like, I'm going to place my flag in the ground and, barbecuing is my thing. I mean, granted, that might be a way, but again, I think that that diversification empowered by a personal brand such as yourself, I think is the thing that's going to, carry it forward. So, and I think also one of the things too, what I see resonating is because I've been doing this for a couple of decades. It's like when I first got into web design, like 93, 94, I really, this is the joke that I would tell my students, because I taught advertising for a while, is I really thought that I got into it late in 93, 94. And then so as it started to really actually mature, and we had our .coms, and then we had the boom and the bust of Y2K and those pre and post years, you saw creative people sort of fall into this digital spectrum of web design, and then later in the 2000 decade of web designers and social media people, and then you have these people over here like graphic designers, creative, TV, radio, outdoor, sort of your traditional media set, and they lived in these two encampments. And what I think is so great now that we've actually pushed into this new decade, I think especially the last 2 or 3 years, is you're really starting to see storytelling and content and things that move people drive past the channel. I mean, it's irregardless of whether it's sitting in a streaming environment or on a television or a radio or a podcast, or whether it's on digital or it's being done inside of these other smaller, more ancillary, app environments or what have you, is now you've got an opportunity for these creative collaborators to come back and actually sit down and develop content. I mean, you've got these people that only used to shoot for TV that are now doing 5-minute vignettes that are really, really killer content, say like, Vice News or something like that, where before they'd be like, well, that shit's on web. I don't know. That's not my thing. It's, becoming platform agnostic is so, I think, cleansing, because it just allows the idea to be what takes the forefront, and no longer about, well, I have to be on these channels.
I like that term that you use, platform agnostic. You should probably brand that or something, trademark it.
.com.
That's the real thing. So soccer is getting huge. This is pretty awesome. There's been this thing in America where we've kind of been like, when is soccer ever going to become like as huge as it is around the world, Yeah. And soccer plays at that same level. Professional soccer plays at the same level of demand for TV as basketball and NFL and baseball. Do people still watch baseball? I'm just kidding.
Sure. Yeah. They just set score alerts at this point.
I grew up loving baseball, Pete Rose, but it's just so slow. They got to do more to speed up that game. Like they have, but let
tigers on the field, or
tigers on the field. Like I want to see the guy box. What's his face, Mayflower or whatever his name is.
Mayflower, yeah.
Yeah, McGregor. I want to see. He has to fight them for the base to be able to bat first.
Yeah.
Or give two people a bat. Give the pitcher a bat and the other guy a bat, and whoever comes out ahead wins.
Like baseball, Thunderdome.
Thunderdome baseball. I think we better go trademark that.
Exactly.
Get on GoDaddy. Somebody right now is on GoDaddy buying that thing. Thunderball baseball. There's probably a porn site for that too as well.
If there isn't, there is now.
I'm not gonna Google that. That's gonna be one of those things. You're just gonna, your kid's gonna come up and go, "Daddy, what's Thunderball baseball? I just Googled it. Look at the pictures." You're like, "Oh."
And that all parents can testify that you give the tablet and you set it up for safe search, right? But I'm telling you, they figure out this rabbit hole of just, I guess all you got to do is just if I don't know, I think it's like there's some sort of magic number. I think maybe like 18 clicks in to whatever the if you like this video, then you might like this one. I think it's like 18 clicks in, it's hardcore, you know, German pornography or something. It's like, I don't know, there's some magic line where it's just like, oh my Lord, you're ready to cast that thing out the window. It's like,
that's like I'm so glad I don't have kids. Like my brother, it's like I didn't see the internet coming. I saw a lot of other crap coming, and that's the reason I never had children. But the whole internet thing, and that I don't think I'd ever sleep. I'd be insanely worried about protecting my children from some of the horrors of the internet. My brother, he's got a beautiful daughter who's about, I don't know what she is, I lose track, but 10, 12, 14. He's got a son, and he just really struggles to keep them off the internet. They're barely allowed on Instagram right now because you just don't know what you could find. And even when I game online with my nephew, we do a lot of gaming and play the same games, and so we're on these audio chats with teams of sometimes six people, and you know, some of the stuff that comes out, especially with these kids that are like 10 or 11. I mean, I don't know how they survive anymore because they're told how many times, you know, somebody was sleeping with their mom last, and you're just like 10 or 11. You're just like, and they're so evil to each other, and they say things that you're just like. I remember a long time ago, I'll never forget it. There was an HBO show about a single dad and his son, and the son comes to him at like 11, and he's like, Dad, you know, I have some questions about sex, and I was wondering if we could, you know. And the dad's like, oh, okay, it's time to have the talk, right? Birds and the bees. So he says to his son, okay, well, let's sit down and let's start out with the birds and the bees. Let's start with just what questions you have. First question out of a kid's mouth is like, Dad, I was on the internet. What's bestiality? And he's just like, it goes from, you know, the simple birds and the bees conversation to, woo! And
yeah. There's
so I'm really glad I don't have kids. I wouldn't want to be like, hey, Dad, I found this on the internet. What is this? You know.
Oh, yeah. It's in every other. It's, you know, if it's not an acronym in a song, or if it's not a you know, some sort of euphemism that is like, you know, some sort of street, you know, vernacular that is being played off as some sort of celebrity status right now. It's like, you know, there's a whole lot of creative thinking when, as parents, you're just like, no, that actually means changing a tire on a car.
Yeah, it does,
you know, it's like whatever it is. You know, it's like, you know. But
Boston steamer, that's where there's a lot of steam in Boston. And, you know, Boston's by the bay, so it's by the bay.
Oh, yes.
Sometimes it gets really humid in Boston. There's steam. Daddy, these don't, that's, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just clear your cache or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just gonna erase the internet and.
The coolest thing of all time, that Google Wi-Fi mesh. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. The one with the little pods, little pucks. Put every device on there, and you can shut Wi-Fi off, like with your mobile app. It's the coolest. So she's like, you know, take a bath in a minute. Take a bath in a minute. It's like, bink, Dad. You know, it's like. Yeah, so I mean, you know, that's the new disciplinarian, and I'm not saying, and I'm not trying to. I mean, you know, I try to be the very best parent I can, but there's no escaping it. It's
there's no spanking anymore. There's no grounding. There's no putting him in a cage, and you know, like I do, put him in a cage for a month, lock him in the basement, that sort of thing. What I used to do before they took my kids away. That's not true. I sold them to an organ harvesting.
That's right. Come on.
No one puts their kids in a cage anymore, but those livers do pay out well. But now, yeah, you just turn off the Wi-Fi and the whole world comes to an end. Like I've even been playing with online, doing raids and stuff, and there'll be like some little 12-year-old, and he's like, you'll hear his mom come screaming in the room, and you're just like, wow, there's 5 of us listening to you being disciplined. This is really uncomfortable. And
you watch those things where the girlfriend like deletes the World of Warcraft account, and you're like going, and I'm sitting there, and then of course the video ends, and I'm sitting there, I'm like going, that's when the murder occurred. Because it's like, you know, I mean, these guys, I mean, you got people, men and women, that are putting down 4, 5, 6, 7 years into these characters.
Oh, I lose the internet, and I start losing my mind. Thank you, I'm blessed. that our relationship with AT&T, we've got MiFi's and all the phones that come to us have tethering on them. So I'm able to save my bacon when that happens. I'm lucky that way. But yeah, when your Wi-Fi goes, or your internet goes down for some reason, I think for some reason in this area we've had a lot of outages, and for the other day they were like 6 hours. They were doing some work. They're like, we're upgrading the system. I'm like, and I don't have any internet. Well, you haven't figured out how to upgrade the system without turning it off, and not
to get conspiratorial, but it's like cyber warfare is an interesting topic in and unto itself. Like like Walmart's entire credit card transaction nationwide going down to, was it 2 or 3 days ago? I'm like, yeah, that happens all the time. An entire business set just shuts off. Yeah, that seems logical. So I'm just saying, it's like, I don't know. I think we're going to see more and more weirdness far before anything else. So,
yeah, the new World War III will be held online, especially with AI, I guess, according to Elon Musk.
That's right. That's right.
But
and Putin said the same thing, supposedly. Yeah.
Well, he would know because he's an architect of it. But yeah, every time I hear somebody talking about AI and stuff, all I ever hear is that theme music from Terminator. Yeah, it's like Skynet. Crap, it's coming. So yeah, I'm just waiting for my machines to turn on me, and God knows I have way too many of them. So I'll probably be the first one to go. So when I go down, Justice, from all the gadgets that we review here on the Chris Voss Show turning against me and marching, you'll see like the cell phone coming up over the back of my head, like Chris, turn on!
So like a terribly bad version of Maximum Overdrive, which wasn't all that good in the first place. It's like
it's turning against you.
Then you send in that Navy SEAL team just to clear your cache and delete your browser history. Look, this is all Chris ever wanted. We just wanted a clean slate after he goes.
Yeah, I'm really surprised somebody hasn't started that service where they will go in and they'll go in with the big hazmat suits.
All right, exactly. And they've got one job.
We got to go in and clean Chris's browser history and his closet out before his mom shows up and finds his sex swing.
Right.
We got to go make sure that's all out of there and all that good stuff. So they need a support system. Like Facebook has a thing where if you get locked out of your account, now you can ordain at least 3 or plus friends that can go, yeah, that's him, that idiot, and get you back in your account. They need that. They need like friends that you can designate to be the person who goes and scrubs your computer.
Right, exactly.
My problem is my family is so inept at the internet. I would not say my brother, but my older family is so inept at the internet that I pretty much, they're the people who call me and they go, hey Chris, I have problems with my computer. I'm like, hit the start button on your Windows 10 there. Where's the start button at? You're like, oh, fuck.
Do you have a kid that's under the age of 10 in the room? Because he'll be able to walk you through this as well.
Break through that. In fact, one of my favorite things is like Brian Kramer, a good friend of ours. His son, I think at least twice, has hacked his password. He's got our Facebook. He's like, hey, and he's a good kid, so he doesn't really do anything bad. But he's like, hey, by the way, this is his son, and I just hacked it. So there you go.
It's so good.
Way to go. That must be embarrassing considering you own an agency. But that's the 10 or 11, 12-year-olds. In fact, nowadays, that's one of the things I hate. My brother, he's got a 12, 14, 16-year-old. I lose track. They still look like this to me when they were like little kids. But he just has him do all his gaming, like the grinding stuff of his gaming.
Right.
For, upgrading your character and stuff. He just has his son do that. And I'm like, now I'm like sitting there going, man, I really should have had kids. I didn't I knew they were good for like mowing lawns and crap.
Come on, there's got to be a service out there that does that too. There's got to be, yeah.
Yeah, like right now I'm thinking, okay, maybe I should adopt a child, but I've got to find a child who's really good at Destiny and Call of Duty, and like really good. So like, can you imagine me at the adoption clinic? I'm down there going, hey, I want to adopt a son, but I need one who's like really, I can check their numbers and make sure they're really good at Call of Duty. Do you have any kids like that? And they're just going to look at me like, no. Get out of here. Leave now. But yeah, I'm kind of regretting the whole not having kids after I've seen all the things you can do with them. Like I would have them do stuff like that. I'd be like, hey, I got a virus in my web, on my WordPress. Come in and fix it, will you? Really? So yeah, I guess I should have had kids, but I'd be a horrible dad, as you can tell.
It's all any of us can do, just is not to mess them up. It's like there's no manual, there's nothing that you can do. It's like you seriously try to figure out every single day. Like, I think that was the right thing to say. And then I look at my wife, and she, if she gives me that nod, I can like leave with peace of mind. But I usually don't get the nod.
Yes, I think you have a brain like I do. You have a comedic brain where you're like, hey, you know what? Let's screw with some people. Let's mess with some heads. And you're just like, we'll give them a little shock and awe. And then you'd realize later there's like, oh wow, they're gonna be like 10 years in a psychiatrist's office.
Oh yeah, totally right. Yeah, they'll be in some water tower somewhere picking people off in 15 years.
And I'm a solutions type person from all the years I've been in business. So my wife would be like, hey, they keep getting out of bed. I'm like, okay. Hey, there's this thing called the monster on the bed, under the bed, and he will chew off your feet. He'll bite them off. You'll never be able to walk again. You'll just have these little stubs. So you should probably stay in bed. And I probably like hook up a monster under there just to like really, but I'm a solutions person.
That's right.
The good intent is keeping them in the bed. But, that brings up another subject I'll throw out to you that I've been thinking about. One of the what's the right word for it? Dichotomy. One of the issues you have as a comedian is pushing the envelope to be funny, but there's sometimes where it's just not funny to people. Like I keep coming up with Houston jokes, and I just know I can't pull those jokes, and I try and I constantly have arguments with myself. Well, that's not quite as bad, and you're just like, no, you just can't touch that right now. And it's kind of that dilemma of like what you were talking about earlier, where sometimes you do put something up that's a little radical, that's a little out there, that's a little edgy, and sometimes it's a learning experience for you and everyone. Bill Maher's recent thing where he kind of pissed off the African-American community by using the N-word on his show ended up being a real learning experience. I even learned from it in hearing Ice Cube talk about what it really is to apply to him and why they use it and we can't, and what it means. And so something like that, where it was a kind of a violation, but it turned out to be a learning experience. We all grew from it, hopefully, and understood each other better. There are some times where it just crosses that bare boundary where it's just freaking offensive and you're being disconsiderate to a horrible situation. It's like trying to make jokes of the shuttle disaster or 9/11. There's just no way you can pull it off.
Well, and I think one of the things that people that are wired more or more eccentrically, we have a tendency to look at a lot of things differently, and I think that oftentimes we may see some value or credibility in something that it's like if you just tee it up to just the standard community as a whole, I think that you're going to find that you're going to have some people that that's going to resonate with, but more than likely not the majority. And I think that, again, then you fight the whole thing. Well, is this for them or is this for me? And then there's that whole struggle. And I think that there's a time and a place for both of those. So certainly, when I try to fuel a conversation that's something that I'm impassioned about, I do try to take, the time to think it through, and yet I still usually put my foot in my mouth because I've made up,
Let's see how we do that with kids. Somebody on Periscope made a great comment. There's some lines you don't cross, and the challenge with that is it's relative, because some people, if I besmirch something even the slightest, they're horribly offended, but I need them to learn. And the challenge is pushing that envelope so that you're not only getting people to laugh, but also getting some education factor from it, or getting people to look introspectively, because that's part of the, as you know, part of the thing of comedy is taking something that we probably should think a little bit more about in reality, and putting a joke spin on it makes us kind of see the aberration or the hypocrisy or the silliness to what we do and go, well, maybe I should really look at that deeper and get some more better clarity on it.
Well, and look at it from, how much, how confident are you with yourself? I mean, frankly, the people that I see that tee up something such as, you may very well come out of the gate making a good point, but as you start to go through your or your point starts to fall apart, I think that, there's a lot of people that, because of their pride or their sense of expertise, perceived expertise, that's where they feel like all of a sudden, I'm being like revealed. And to me, I've always gone in it with an anti-guru mentality of like, well, this is how I feel, let's kick this around. And if it ends up like any creative idea, never, ever ends up being exactly what you started with. Same thing with a conversation. I think that, most of the time you certainly play to get what you want back from it. Let's just say a political post. I mean, you hope that the vast majority of the people are going to agree with you, but you're going to find that there's going to be people that aren't. And if they adequately prove their point and in a way that I think is authentic and reasonable, well, then don't be a douchebag and say, you know what, that's an extremely good point. And I'm going to validate that by saying, okay, so I don't believe what I just said at 100% anymore, because, that makes sense.
Yeah. I've had people change my mind on that. There was a subject that you had that I had, but space it off. Old age, first thing to go is the brain. Look at me. I'm almost all gray.
Oh, dude, are you kidding me? Forget about it. This little patch. Yeah, and I always know when I gotta like cut my hair because I call it a hair spoiler. It's a thing in the back that pops up like a little Japanese cars. It's awesome.
Do you know how hard of a time I'm having picking up 18-year-olds with this now? I mean, I wait outside the high school, and it's for the seniors to let out because
that's right. Well,
I'm not a pervert.
Work on the dysfunctionally, emotionally dysfunctional mothers, like outside of the bathroom at Chili's, just when they funnel out, just,
daughter-mother teams. I'm not sure what
Oh, Lord, here we go. That's not where I was going, but.
Well, okay. Well, I did. So I think this has been a great lesson on branding. We've been roaming for an hour, but we need to have you and I come back more and talk about stuff, because we could probably compile so much ad hominem hours of this. People would just be loading guns and putting it in their mouth. Like, really? These idiots again? But we're both funny and brilliant. At least you are. So let's do this. Let's wrap the show, Justice, because I want to have you back again. I don't want to take everything you know. And I think if I get another hour, we might top it off.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, right. That's right. It's topped off. Exactly.
Because really, do I have anything else? Seriously, have you been following me for all these years? Plus, I need to shower, and I think we have another podcast in the can that we got. Cool. And I really would love to have you back. I want to have you back. I'm going to. I'm not going to go there with the jokes. But I'm going to be thinking about you till then. I might be naked alone in a room thinking about you, but really want you back because you're brilliant. And you have a good radio voice too, as well. I think we mentioned that before the show.
Thank you. We can do some commercial spots. We'll do some 30 seconds and some interstitials in there too.
So give us the plugs for your brand again, where we can find you.
Oh, well, justicemichel.com is always going to be the thing that is you're going to find sort of the day-to-day. My consultancy is bigblockstudios.com, and my full-time profession is that of CMO for Magruder laservision.com out of Orlando, Florida. We do LASIK and vision correction. He's like I said, the staff here is amazing, and it's a really cool place to work. And the big thing that we've been doing is this sort of this alternative channel, which is queenscast.com. That's a podcast for women's soccer for the Orlando Pride and collegiate women's soccer. So those are the big ones, and I really appreciate you having me on the show. You and I have always we've been like brothers throughout the years, and this is I thought this was a great opportunity, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm loving the fact that I'm opening up the show to more topics, to where it's pretty much open to everything except for a few things. I did a podcast on this. Like, somebody hit me up and they're like, I want to come talk about martial arts stuff. And I know you love martial arts, so it's probably, maybe I should reconsider my thinking there. But I'm just not into the martial arts thing. It just reminds me of gay rape in prison. It just does. I'm two guys.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but yes, that's one of them.
Got his head by another guy's other parts, and it just every time I see it, I'm like, that's what that looks like if you're in jail. Country music is another thing. If you want to come on and talk about country music, I'd be like, no, it should be in the up. So there will be some time.
I thought you were going to make some sort of country music prison rape corollary, and I was going to be like, I think it's going to take a long time to get there, but I'm interested to see.
No, actually, I can bridge that. Deliverance.
Okay, fair.
Prison rape.
Fair, there you go. Okay,
right there, Southern Alabama, Georgia. Boom. Now I'm going to get a bunch of Georgia hate mail, Alabama hate mail. I always love when I get the hate mail from Alabama and Georgia. They're like, we're not backwoods, like you say. Have you looked at who you people elect in not only your state, but your federal things? I mean, they speak for you. I mean, really. So enough of picking on them. But Justice, we'd love to have you back again. Everyone follow Justice and all his links. We'll put some on the Chris Voss Show so you can check them out. Follow him on Facebook and on Instagram, especially in Twitter. He posts some of the most funniest things. He will self-deprecate himself. The most geekiest, crazy. He's better at geekiness than I am, even though I think I'm a geek.
There's a lot of geekiness.
Yeah, just the stuff that when you see it, you'll just break down laughing. And it's always funny. It's always interesting. It's always intellectual. And I think you're one of the few people that we count in that category that can pull that off on social media and be human with their brand. So thanks for coming on, Justice. And we'll wrap the show. Everyone follow us on YouTube at YouTube/Chris Voss. Be sure to hit the notification bell button so you can get notifications of the show. We're trying to get more people on the mobile app notifying that. We're actually tri-casting this on Periscope. So thanks to my Periscope audience for tuning in. Be sure to follow us over there. Facebook Live mentions the Facebook fan page for the Chris Voss Show on the fan page on the Facebook there, and patreon.com/Chris Voss. Follow us over there. You can get exclusive content and exclusive access to the private groups that we do. We actually give away some of that crap you were talking about. I shouldn't say crap, the review products that we have.
Are you kidding me? You review the coolest stuff ever. It's like amazing.
There's a Teal Audio $4,000 speaker. It's actually, that's 2,000 of them. 2,000 is over there, but yeah, we try to. We get us all the cool stuff. Our AT&T phones are actually, I should plug AT&T. They're actually helping us broadcast right now at AT&T, fastest download and upload speeds network. We're actually broadcasting using them for the Samsung Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus. Could I plug any more? Jesus, Justice.
There's time. There's time. We can roll some stuff off to put a lower third down there. We can
That's what I need. I need a third, which I usually actually have. But just a rolling screen there, like CNN of what the latest plugs are.
You got spots behind you. You could put spots
behind you. You know, I actually thought about that years ago. I was going to have a big banner, the Chris Voss Show, and just be like, whatever. See, like you have that. You have like branding behind you. That's really smart.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got the studio down there. We've got all the stuff from the show right there. We've got put up the whiteboard and whatnot. So
look at me. I got nothing back here. What a loser.
I'm telling you, man. Come on, look it out.
Why do people pay me for marketing? What is going on? Anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys. We love you as an audience, and be sure to watch for the next episode we'll be doing. I think we're going to actually have a live podcast here in about 3 or 4 hours. So many people have been hitting me up with the new open podcast that there it is. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you. Take care, Justin. Justice.
Take care. That's all right. Got that.
It's the end of the show.